I mean, I think it's growth, right? Like it's the Sun Belt. There's diversity of employment, stable base there's a stable, non-brackable presence of military. It's beautiful. It's still kind of a hidden treasure.
You're still finding deals?
Still finding deals for sure. The competition exists, but it's not the same as major markets. And then, there's a lot of people that are, I think, scared of the Gulf Coast, right? There's the hurricane fears, and there's things that are maybe kind of outside of our control, right? That we can use insurance for to kind of get over. But some people just decide they're not going to even kind of mess with it. And so, we've had a lot of success kind of we've had a lot of success being able to overcome what some other people would consider fear in buying in this market. And then there's just lots of runway for growth. And so things that happen in other major markets don't happen here immediately, so we can kind of keep track of the broader market and then kind of expect and anticipate changes that will be happening here in the Gulf Coast, especially when it comes to rent raises and occupancy and job growth. These smaller markets, you can a little bit more kind of foresee kind of the future as it's following other major markets in kind of setting a precedent. We don't feel like we need to be the entrepreneur or the person that has to start or create something. We're perfectly happy finding a solid business model that's repeatable and that's works and repeat the best practices over and over again. There's no need to get overly creative as long as you're staying in front of kind of any kind of waves of change yourself. What we're buying is deep value, and so you can't replace the things that we buy typically for the amount of money we're paying for them. So if the building burned down, right, our insurance value is typically higher than our purchase price. What does that mean? Well, it means that we're able to meet a market demand in workforce housing or even in the RV parks, mobile home parks, where we can meet a price point that you couldn't build a property and compete against us because your cost to build and your carrying cost would demand that you would charge a much higher rent rate than we're going to be able to charge on a renovated building. And so we're able to continue to meet the middle market in a way that new builds aren't able to be met, and we were able to kind of find that value, and instead of needing the market to continue to rise, we're able to buy with enough kind of value, enough moat, as a stock investor might talk about, that recessions or some kind of downturn or some kind of change in the market doesn't necessarily affect the way that we kind of operate and make money, because we're already buying with kind of enough value kind of baked into the deal that the product, you can't keep building that product, you can't find that product, and so if you own that product and you can continue to operate effectively, you're going to be able to succeed. There's always somebody that needs a place to live. We talk a lot of times to investors, and I think when I call it the nose scrunch, right? People go, I don't know about that, right? They get a little scrunch right here in your nose. To me, that makes me really excited, right? Because I invest to make a return and to do good, not to have something that's a really pretty picture that I can go show everybody, right? And so when I separate things that I like or places that I want to live with places that can make a really good return and they can have a really good impact, it frees me up quite a bit. So talking to investors about, listen, this may not be a place that you want to live, but for the tenant and the resident and the person who's using this facility, this meets a need for them in their life. We're able to provide it at a price point that they can afford and provide them some amenities and some care that maybe they would not expect kind of at that typical price point. And so we can build communities at a lower price point with really good people because we can kind of pick and choose a little bit more on who we move in, vice having to have the top line, super nice, brand new facility. But that also requires typically that the market continues to improve for you to make money as you go there. We can make money regardless of the market because there's always going to be a need for workforce housing for young families. There's a greater need for housing than there is availability. And so we continue to kind of work in that space where we provide that available housing. And so even if we have turnover, we're not scared by that because we know there's literally a list of 10 people for every single unit that we possibly have available. We often have waiting lists, and so that allows us to be able to kind of pick and choose a little bit when it comes to quality of tenant. And so we don't have to take anybody. We can take the best and really kind of create that community, improve the property, and still maintain that price point that's competitive in the market. So, core values are something that I think we hear a lot, right? We come from a military background, we talk about them. Some people internalize them, some don't. Sometimes it seems a little silly. But when we sat down to create Climb Capital, we had to take kind of a deep look at ourselves and say, listen, if we don't like going to work, it's our fault, right? We started this, so if I don't like it, there's no one to go look at and yell at. There's not a boss, it's me, right? And so we want to create a company. We want to have just a culture that is something that we want to be a part of. And so coming from a airplane and a helicopter background as pilots, coming from a military background, there are some things that we've just kind of accepted as what, quote, normal in the way that we operate in our lives. And we wanted to bring some of those things to real estate. And so, one of the things that we are really kind of big proponents on is let's work smart, not hard. You can dig a ditch miles and miles in the wrong direction, right? And I'm really glad that you worked hard, but you didn't provide value for anybody. And so we don't want people working for us just to slave away and hustle and grind, because that doesn't necessarily get you anywhere. We want people to make smart decisions that make the right answer at the right time, and do that. Find that answer today, not 2 weeks from now, right? So we can make that decision and kind of keep moving. The value is not in the effort, the value is in the outcome. And so we don't want to just value just grinding and beating up this process and whatever it takes. We want to go figure out what it takes and then do what it takes so that we can do that and then do the next one and not burn ourselves out. And we think when we do that, right, not only do we create a culture of employees that's really happy, but that reflects to our tenants too, right? If our managers, if our staff aren't always burned out, then they're going to have a better relationship, right? Going to have more kind of margin in their life to be able to kind of spend with people and keep improving things. So the other core value that we really believe in is make it right. And so a lot of times we're buying properties that have been neglected. We jokingly call them slumlords sometimes, right? The idea of an owner who buys a property and they use it as an ATM, and they take and they take and they take and they never reinvest in the property. And so when we buy something, we're thinking value for the long term. And so we want to buy that thing, we want to improve that thing, and then we want to have a plan to keep improving that thing over time, right? And so maybe that costs us a little bit in total return, but it's adding value over time, so when we go to sell that property at some point in the future, we haven't let it completely degrade and have to just sell it kind of pennies on the dollar. We're continuing to have a property that continues to create and push value kind of over time, and kind of really being stewards, right? And so we don't necessarily plan to own all of our buildings for 100 years, but some of these buildings will be around for 100 years. And so if we're going to be in a legacy of ownership in something, we don't want us to be kind of a stain on that name for some of these properties and some of these communities that we go into. So anything that we can to make it better, leave it a little bit better than we found it, do the right thing. You find a lot of problems in commercial real estate and in multifamily. You open up a wall and it's all wrong. You can just close the wall up and nobody will know, right? But we'll know, right? And so we don't do just enough. We do it correct. Do it once, and then just be done with it. The other thing that we're big on is grit. Almost any problem, given enough resources and time and effort, can be solved, right? And so, we've had times that some of our early real estate deals were undercapitalized or had poor management or for whatever reason didn't match pro forma. Well, you have a couple options, right? You can just throw in the towel and say, it didn't work. Everybody's against me. Or you can say, no, we can work this problem out. Let's figure out what the problem is, find a solution, and then work the solution. And that solution may take a little bit of time. It may suck, right? It may not be fun for a little bit, but if you can just stick it out, right, keep working the process works, right? We know that if you go to the gym every day and you lift weights, you will get stronger, right? But you can't go to the gym one time in a year and then be shocked when you're not stronger the next year, right? It's a process. And so we believe that the process is real, and we have to have a process, and then we have to kind of just keep chipping away day after day after day, and believe that long term that effort will we'll take whatever problem and turn to a pretty solid solution. And not everybody's built out for that, right? That's some people, they're unable to kind of foresee that there's an end goal, right? They see short-sightedly that, hey, this is hard, I don't want to do this anymore, there's a better option. We just have this kind of loyalty complex that once we kind of jump onto the problem, we're like the pit bull, right? Once we grab on, we're just going to kind of hold until we can shake that problem loose and make that, whatever that issue is, kind of turn that back around. We firmly believe that if we're going to add value and we're going to create value for other people, we want that value to be with people that align with us, right? And so we may not be a fit for everybody, and we're okay with that, right? We want people that see the long-term value, that don't see every problem as a complete brick wall that they can't get through. We want to go buy these kind of deep value properties, and deep value properties are going to have deep problems. They're going to have to be solved, right? And so we're looking for the investor that wants that value, but is able to accept, right, the process it's going to take to get there. At the same time, right, we want to have fun. So if people are miserable, it's not worth doing it, right? Again, it goes back to, we started Climb Capital. If I don't like coming to work, it's my fault, right? And so we want to make sure that everything we do, that we enjoy the process and not just always be looking for a finish line. Because the finish line, yeah, we're going to get there, but I don't know when we're going to get there, and I want to enjoy the whole process as we go, right? Both working with our tenants, working with the other employees, right? Working at Climb Capital, let's enjoy the process as much as we possibly can along the route.